Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 6 of the Titanforge Podcast. My name is Dratnos. Joining me, as always, is my friend Trell.
Hey guys, how's it going?
And then Tettles is here this week, although Tettles does not have the ability to use a video, because, Tettles, you've moved to a new place, right?
Yep, we are in a new location that does not have internet, but I'm on a wireless hotspot, so we're just gonna fucking wing it. So.
All right, sounds good. Sounds like a plan. So this week we are going to talk about patch 8.2. We are recording a little bit in advance, so this is not live if you're watching on Twitch, although that'll be obvious because it's going to be a video. And it's definitely not live if you're listening to the podcast feeds, but it's never been live for you, so you don't care. Anyways, we're recording a couple days before we normally would. I'm going out of town. Trell's going out of town. Everybody's going out of town this week. So it works out. I don't know. It works out pretty well. Obviously, there's a new patch, so it's kind of a bad time, but also it's this 2-week off-season thing, so for anybody who doesn't know, for the next 2 weeks, Mythic Plus is kind of paused. You can still do it, but you're going to get last season rewards, last season's amount of residuum. The score, Radar.io score is closed for Season 2, so there's a new 2-week post-season thing that you can earn points towards, which it could be fun, but it's, for the most part, is kind of a diversion off-season thing. So there's also no new raid, no new dungeons. So all in all, I think it is a pretty good week to go away for. It's better than missing Heroic Week or Mythic Week, which is something I have done before and I've been crippled for a whole tier because of.
Yep, I can relate to that too. Yeah, Had to miss a couple weeks of Mythic Prog last year. That was cool.
That is what we try to avoid. So that's why our show is the way it is this week. This week our topics are going to be, we're going to talk about essences, the ones that we have so far, the ones that are attainable right now, how they're attainable, whether that's a good thing, whether that's a bad thing. We'll talk about a couple specific essences that we have played with, that we've seen played with, or that we have some ideas on how we might play with them, both in keys and just kind of in general, in raid content as well. And then we'll talk just kind of in general about 8.2, what we've seen of it so far, what we think of the new zones, and the, various structures that they've put in place with this one. So let's just jump right in with essences, and we'll do a short kind of overview again of what the essence system is. So if you've played through the first 30 minutes of the quest, you get access to this essence in your Heart of Azeroth. You start off with just one, the Crucible of Flame, and you start off with only one slot in your Heart of Azeroth. And when you put an essence in that slot, you get both its major power and its minor power. And then once your neck gets to 55, you unlock another slot, but that's only for whatever you put in there. You only get the minor power, you don't get the major. And then you get another minor power only slot at 65. So to start off with the Crucible of Flame, this one's the one that everybody gets. The active just does some damage or healing, and then increases the damage or healing in the next one by 100%. And that goes up 3 times, so it'll do 10,000, 20,000, 30,000, 10,000 on cast. And then the minor is just a proc that does damage or healing. So a very simple essence, very easy to understand. The major is on the global cooldown, so you do have to, it depends, depending on what spec you're playing. I'm playing Elemental Shaman, it doesn't easily fit into the rotation in all that many spots, but if you're playing a melee spec with a lot of downtime, where you have a lot of moments in your global or in your rotation where you're pooling resources, that one may end up being pretty good. And the minor actually does some pretty substantial damage just by itself as well. And then the way you get this, you obviously get the first one just from doing the quest line, and then to get the increased ranks of this, you just need to increase your Heart of Azeroth to 54 and 60. So that, again, the way that essences work is there's 4 ranks. The first 3 are power level increases, and the 4th is just a cosmetic increase. And the cosmetic increase for the Crucible of Flame is level 70, so that just makes it look cooler. Trell, you've been playing with Crucible of Flames, yeah? How's that been working for you in Mythic Plus?
So all 5 of us played a couple dungeons with it yesterday, since that's the only essence we had for the most. And for the most part, in AOE situations, it's underwhelming. It only hits one target. It's on the global cooldown. It only does a little bit of damage until the second and usually only the 3rd proc. It can also be a good spot healing tool, though. So if you're in a big AoE situation and someone has, say, 7 spit debuffs from Magus and Wakecrest, then you can hit them with the Crucible. And if several people have that, it's like a couple people giving one player Holy Shock.
Okay.
Something.
All right, I'll
something-
say it. I don't think they're gonna live through 7 spits.
I mean, yeah, they cloaked anyway, but it was the thought that counted. Something interesting about it though is I think I'm like 99% sure, but it does apply the damage through Blade Flurry if you're an Outlaw Rogue. So if you have Blade Flurry running and you hit the button for Crucible of Flame, it does AoE everything around it, or around the Rogue rather.
That's good. Yeah, Outlaw Rogue is a spec that really needed some help this patch.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's important that some of these essences interact with it favorably, so that it'll get a little bit better. That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the Crucible of Flame. No complaints about how to acquire that one. You just level up your Heart of Azeroth. Very, very easy to do. But there are some essences that we may have some, I guess, discussion about how they're acquired and whether or not we're fans of the way they're acquired. So, for instance, World Vein Resonance is one that looks pretty good for a lot of specs. The way it works is the World Vein Resonance summons Lifeblood Shards, both the major and the minor power. Create Lifeblood Shards, and the way that Lifeblood Shards work is that they sit on the ground, they give everybody within 12 yards 170 primary stat, and you can benefit from up to 4 shards at once. So obviously the more people that have this essence, the more likely you are to just have full uptime of the 4 Lifeblood Shards effect. And then the major power makes a couple shards appear immediately, and the minor power is just every few seconds a Lifeblood Shard comes out of the ground. So the way you get this, though, is by island expeditions. And that is something that has been a little bit controversial. I mean, okay, requiring a little bit, like, you don't have to do too many islands to get this thing, but you are going to have to do weekly islands for a while, I think, to get the later ranks of this, right? And that's something that not everybody enjoys, island expeditions, as shocking as that may be to hear. How do you guys feel about stuff gated behind like island expeditions, and I guess we're going to talk more about other essences that are gated behind other stuff too.
I'm not a huge fan personally. I think there's going to be a couple of essences I need, and just starting on one character, my monk, I'll have to do some content that I don't really want to do for weeks on end just to get the higher ranks of that essence, and then I have to consider how many other tanks I have to do that for. If I'm going to be a real good tank player, I got to have several tanks up to speed.
Yeah.
I got a long road ahead of me for acquiring essences. What do you think, Tettles?
I don't know, man. I think, okay, so I know PvPers complain a lot about having to do like PvE content to get like trinkets and Azerite and shit like that they need, and like I feel like we're definitely getting the reverse of it, where some people have to fucking PvP for Conflict and Strife, some people have to go do island expeditions. I know there was a joke tweet about fucking pet battle essence, like shit like that. It is like, I understand that they want you to do all of their content, and I understand that it's not to like a super huge level. Like, it's not super hard to get all these essences, but at the same time, I really don't want to do islands. Like, I'll be real with you. I really don't want to do islands.
Same.
Yeah, island expeditions are something that is not the primary reason I play World of Warcraft. So I can agree with that. I think that you've stumbled on something really important as well, Trell, that like alts with essences looks like it's going to be a pretty serious commitment to get essences on your alts.
I don't even want to think about it yet, man.
Yeah.
There's so much.
Now that being said, like it's not like you need to get every essence, right? There's 21 different essences, of which 6 are for everybody, and then 5 are gated behind each spec. So, but you only ever will have 1 slotted in your major power and 2 slotted in minor slot onlys. So you only ever need 3 essences, and depending on how much swapping around you might need to do, like. Okay, there are some situational essences that you might want access to, in addition to whichever ones are normally your best ones. Like Ripple in Space, for instance, is one that I think has quite a bit of utility on fights like Unat, actually. So Ripple in Space, the major power is like a blink. It's like a Void Elf racial, where you create a beacon at a location, and then 2 seconds later, or 4 seconds later if you have the rank 1 only, it teleports you to that beacon. So you can use that. Like there may be raid fights in particular where you would use specific essence like Ripple in Space in your major slot if there's a mechanic that it's good against. And there might be some essences that you'd want for some affixes or for some dungeons, or to fill a hole in your group's composition. So like you may want access to more than 3, but you probably don't need access to all of them, right? Like you can look at your class and be like, hey, Vision of Perfection, not too good for me, Conflict and Strife, not too good for me, and you just don't have to worry about earning those essences. So I think it might not be the end of the world, particularly like by the time we're getting around to gearing our alts in a couple weeks, there will be more knowledge about which ones are good for which specs, and we won't spend time chasing essences that don't end up mattering.
I mean, some of them are just god awful to get though. Like having to go farm BGs and stuff like that. That is like just so time consuming and so unfun for me. I don't know, man.
That's one of the spec specific ones, right? It's
the crit one.
Blood of the enemy.
Blood of the enemy. Yeah.
Blood of the enemy. Okay.
It's so good for so many people. Like I totally understand, but like man, having to go out and farm battlegrounds, especially if you hate battlegrounds, is just so horrible.
Yeah. So to get the rank 3 of this, you have to earn 50,000 honor from PvP island expeditions, brawls, battlegrounds, and epic battlegrounds. That's rough.
Yeah, that's a lot.
That is rough. The one good thing is the brawl. There is a PvE brawl. Okay. There's a brawl against bots at Arathi Basin. So, if you hate PvP, that's coming out, I think, on Heroic Week, and I think you could just smash that brawl over and over again and get your honor that way. So, avoid having to actually PvP and getting this one. Another good thing about Blood of the Enemy is they've nerfed it a couple times. There's it doesn't look like it's super bis for anybody anymore, but it's still not bad. Especially you may be interested in just the minor on this thing.
I mean, you're definitely interested in it right now, at least, though, too, right? Especially since you have such limited access to all the essences.
Yeah.
Going out right now is like a pretty big hot commodity.
Right. So you could get rank 3 Blood of the Enemy right now just by spamming battlegrounds, right? So it's a rank 3 you can get, whereas some of the good rank 3s are gated behind content that you can't get to yet, right? Like, if you want this condensed life force thing, you're gonna need to kill bosses in the Eternal Palace for like 3 weeks or something, or maybe more to get access to it. So by the time you're in there, it might be deep into progression, and you would have been doing well with the rank 3 Blood of the Enemy already. Similarly, there's one that you might need to do 15 weeks of Mythic Plus to get the rank 3 of. For DPS, this one's called the Essence of the Focusing Iris, but there's a different one, like it's the Anima of Life and Death for tanks, which looks like it might be an interesting one for tank damage. That one gives you a damage major power based on your maximum health that does AoE damage that's not split. And as we know, AoE damage that's not split is fine as long as you're not a Brewmaster, in which case it has to be nerfed into the ground.
Yeah, that's true. Rip Hot Trub.
Rip Hot Trub. Rip Hot Trub. So yeah, that's I guess the kind of a quick little overview of the essences. Trell, there were some specific essences that you wanted to talk about for tanking, right? In keys, potentially?
Yeah, so the first one I was looking at yesterday was Fear of Suppression, and that's the essence you get from doing the battlegrounds and the PvP islands. And that's the DPS version of that is Blood of the Enemy, and tanks get Fear. It looks like it's going to be really good for filling a utility gap on necrotic weeks for tanks. You get a 70% slow for 8 seconds, which is about the same length as necrotic. I think necrotic's 8 or 9 seconds now for the debuff.
Yeah, it's an AoE slow, and it reduces their attack speed, which is potentially going to be pretty good if you're like that. If that stops a necrotic swing from hitting you, then that's going to be awesome also. Or this will just stop necrotic from applying. So like this just slows down how quickly necrotic applies. Even if you're in a position where you can't kite for some reason, this is still going to have a lot of utility against necrotic.
Yeah. So if you don't need a kite, you can always pop it on pull anyways. As a 45-second cooldown, so you can use it roughly once a pull, and you can pop it on pull as you go in and take basically 25% less damage because of the less attack speed on every mob. That's actually really good. Yeah. And then the minor power is decent too. You get a haste proc every time something hits you, which is fantastic. And
it slows them when stuff hits you by 30%, which for some compositions that slow is like there are some comps where you're playing no slow in your comp, so a 30% slow is actually will be noticeable.
That's true. Guardian doesn't have a slow anymore.
Right. So if you're playing like Guardian Outlaw or something, just putting a composition that makes sense to me in my head, the 3 Outlaw rogues, you might not have access to another slow.
Huh. Wait a second.
Those are just 3 random viable Mythic Plus specs that I could think of that didn't have a slow.
Why don't you just play Assassination, dude? You got a permanent 50% slow. Wait a second.
That's true. Yeah, and the Sphere of Suppression, also the rank 3, comes with a sprint when you activate it too, which is pretty exciting. It gives you 8 seconds of you getting increased movement speed, so that'll be really nice for kiting.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's really big.
Yeah, so
movement speed in any little gain like that, even like a 3-second slow, is a huge deal for a tank on the crowd.
We'll have to see if this reducing attack speed effect affects bosses or not. That'll be something to check in on. If it does, then this could certainly be like just a really good one, kind of in general, because you could. I mean, like against everything except magic damage, it's going to be a 25% DR for 8 seconds on a 45-second cooldown. That's not bad. That is not bad at all. So that's an awesome one. All right, were there any others that looked exciting to you?
Yeah, there's another one. Aegis of the Deep is another tank essence. The major power says the elements protect you, reducing the damage you take from each attack by about 1,500 for 15 seconds. While that's not like extremely good, the minor effect is you gain versatility for each enemy within 10 yards up to, I think, 600 I read on the tooltip for. So in Mythic Plus, you're going to have like ultimately 600 verse for every trash pull, which is pretty strong. That's like, I think, 7% verse on my Brewmaster.
Yeah, and then when you're below 35% health, you got double the verse effect of that.
Yeah, once you get rank 2, it looks like.
And you heal yourself for 1,000 every 4 seconds for each stack of this, which is for each enemy within 10 yards, up to the cap. So that's going to be sizable like HPS. Yeah.
I feel like that'll be probably a default minor power for tanks.
Yeah, this looks like you probably don't want this too much for the major. It'd be good against a couple of specific situations in the major slot, but I don't think like reducing every attack by such a small amount, that kind of effect is pretty niche. You're rarely in that much danger when you're taking 1,000 small attacks, because those are usually situations where you can just AoE stun and run away if you're about to die anyway. Usually you're in more danger from like big and medium attacks over time. Although Brewmaster, you're right, a hole in the Brewmaster kit is weakness to a lot of fast attacks that are small.
Yep, it's true.
So maybe for Brewmaster in particular, this would be pretty good. And then the HPS, like this is what, 250 HPS on you for each enemy within 10 yards up to the cap on the minor. That's pretty good.
Yeah, little things here and there adding up. These essences will be quite good, I think, for tanks.
Tettles, what'd you have there?
What do you guys actually think about the multiple rank thing, like having to farm out like multiple ranks? I think that's also part of the issue with like alt farming. It's not necessarily acquisition of like rank 1, but it's like acquisition of like rank 3, where you actually unlock like your full potential and your full power like later on, like weeks into it, right?
Yeah, I don't think I mind it. Like I don't think we should expect to just be immediately full power on our alts like instantly. I don't know. It kind of, one thing that feels bad is there's some essences that are really hard to get rank 3 of by comparison to the other ones. Like Aegis of the Deep here is just get exalted with the Nazjatar reputation, and then you got it. But there are some that are like, hey, do rated PvP, do 15 M+10s this season, that kind of stuff, which is a lot more of an ask, right? Or get 50,000 honor from BGs. So that kind of stuff is a much more like on your alts. Those ones are going to be much more of a pain. I agree. I think it would be maybe one thing that they could consider doing is giving you some kind of catch-up mechanic towards essences you already have on your account, to help you get it the second time on other characters.
I think they've got to be doing that. 15 weeks is insane.
I mean, yeah. I imagine if they're going to come out with that kind of thing, it won't be immediately. They'll wait until a couple months into the patch before they really speed up your alt progression.
Do we know about the condensed life force, like the rock guy that you get from raid? Do we know how quickly you can actually get that one?
Condensed life force. So this is you get aqueous reliquaries. Mm-hmm. So you need 9, 18, and then 27 aqueous reliquaries to get the ranks of this. And aqueous reliquary drops from Radiance of Ajara, the Queen's Court, or Queen Ajara. Yeah, I have no idea how many of these drop from each difficulty. I don't think anybody knows yet. If it's 1 per, then it's going to take quite a while. If it's like 3 per, it would be weird for it to be 3 per, though. Like that doesn't make sense. They could just make it 1. And so yeah, I don't know. As it stands, if it was 1 per, it would take a lot of weeks to get the different ones here. Unless you could get the same drop on different difficulties. In that case, you could just do LFR, normal, heroic, and mythic of whichever of these bosses you could, and you could get it pretty quick each week.
Yeah, my napkin math tells me that 27 divided by 3 is 9, so I guess the maximum wait time would be 9 weeks.
Well, that's to get the rank 3, right? But like,
I think
maybe everything added up.
Do you need to do ranks 1 and 2 to get rank 3?
Yeah.
Do you have
maybe,
to like
right?
do you have to like submit them, or are they like just like sitting in your bag, or like
They hang out in your bags, and you can right click on them to create the item.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think that once you've done that, then it'll turn into a new item that you can start doing to create the rank 2 version and then the rank 3 version.
I mean, so I know you get 2 on normal, but like I don't know how many you get on heroic, right?
Okay, if you're getting 2 on normal, that probably means you're getting 1
good,
on LFR, and that probably means you're getting like 4 or something on heroic and like 10 or something on mythic. I don't know. There's like some kind of increase. Maybe it's just 1, 2, 3, 4. Maybe it's 1, 2, 4, 8. Those are some patterns that would be good. But either way, that means
Wouldn't be that bad then.
particularly if you can get it from multiple difficulties in the same week, it means you could get this thing pretty quick. It's also unclear how good the condensed life force is.
That thing fucks.
The minor power on this is exciting. I love the minor power on this thing. So it gives you the rank 3 in particular is where it starts to be really exciting. Your spells and abilities have a high chance to impale your target with a spike of Azerite, doing a boatload of fire damage. But the cool part is when an Azerite spike deals damage, all damage you deal against that target is increased by 10% for 6 seconds.
Yeah, and the major on that thing is fucking owner too. The Rock Boy actually does huge damage, and they've nerfed that bitch like 3 times, and it's still like the best.
Yeah, so the major on this is a 3-minute cooldown. So for specs that have 3 or 1.5 cooldowns, this could line up with that really nicely. It summons a Guardian of Azeroth for 30 seconds, who impales your targets with spikes of Azerite, which probably will proc when a spike of Azerite deals damage, all damage you deal against that target is increased by 10% for 6 seconds. So it summons an ad who impales your target with spikes of Azerite. So for the whole time that's up, you're getting the 10% damage increase. Every 8 seconds, it launches a volley of Azerite spikes that do AoE damage. And then each time it casts a spell, you gain 2% haste, stacking up to 5 times, so you'll end up with 10% haste out of this. So yeah, you get this ad that gives you 10% haste, 10% damage to the target, and that's for 30 seconds, and it does damage. So yeah, this is awesome. You're right. And it comes from raid. You have to raid for this.
Yeah, but like you get 2 on normal, so I would assume that it ends up scaling up, but I don't really know how hard, right?
Yeah, it's from Radiance, the Queen's Court, and Queen Ajar. So those are pretty deep in the dungeon. A lot of them are. It won't be too easy to farm. You won't be getting mythic Aqueous Reliquaries all that quick into the patch, depending on how quick your guild is. But yeah, you're right. This one is going to be one to aim for long term. And then
That seems really cool.
To get the legendary cosmetic effect, you have to defeat Mythic Queen Ajara. I love that. I love a cosmetic effect for defeat Mythic Queen. Yeah, that's really cool. Okay. So yeah, those are just some of the essences. We're not going to go through all of them, but there are a lot of really cool ones. Some of the I don't know. One of my favorite parts about the essence system is thinking about how it might allow specs that you don't see too much of in M+ to fill a hole in their kit that then lets them get into M+. So I'm thinking specifically of like tank specs and healer specs that there was something missing from their kit that you can fill with an essence major power potentially. That's the kind of thing that I'm really excited to see if it ends up coming true, because I'd love to see some more diversity among tanks and healers in Mythic+. Okay, so yeah, we've talked about that. Let's talk a little bit about Blizzard's goals for essences versus what's actually occurring here, because I think there may be a little bit of a disconnect here. Are these creating a choice for people, or do you guys expect that we'll end up seeing for most specs everybody running the exact same essences among everybody else in that spec?
Dude, some of these look just like total dog shit. Like that Ripple in Space thing, I don't think anybody ever plays that. Like, I don't understand. So like half of these are like okay.
Well, Ripple in Space, it looks situational, right? Like if you need a blink can be the most powerful ability in the game if you need it.
I mean, dude, yeah, if you're cheesing something, it's a little bit different, right? But I don't know. I can't see that ever being really used, like outside of literally cheesing beams on Una, right? Maybe.
Right.
But then you have shit like Worldbane Resonance, which is like a group-wide thing, which we can hit on Worldbane in a little bit if we really want to. But like, it's like a group-wide thing where you end up buffing your group-wide damage, so it's like a group activity that you end up having to play. But it's like if you have it on a bunch of people, it's pretty much mandatory. You actually have just no option to take anything else. Like as a minor, obviously as a major it's a little bit different, but as a minor that like almost has to stay.
No, the way it'll work is if everybody in your raid has one of these in the minor, nobody like nobody should take it as a major because there's no value from that, and everybody will just have the full uptime of 4 lifeblood shards always.
Yeah, so you have to have it as a minor. So it's like there's no
Yeah.
real choice there. As for the majors, there's always going to be like 1 or 2 that just completely outshine the others. Like obviously, there's going to be some situational stuff like condensed life force can be good because it's like a 3-minute cooldown. So if you need like huge priority damage, it can be good. How often do you need a 3-minute cooldown? Like really?
Once every 3 minutes or so.
I meant that is how many.
That's a loaded question, Tettles.
All right, hold on.
Um,
But I'm sure you get my point though. Like there's very few of these that are like so situationally good, and it's because they're made in such a way that it's like they're so generic that they have to be able to be balanced in a certain way, but at the same time they're not specific enough for you to be looking to use them situationally.
Yeah, there are some that look pretty different for different specs. Like Memory of Lucid Dreams, for instance, is an essence that gives you on the minor power, your spells and abilities have a chance to refund the resource that was spent on them and give you a little bit of a heal. And then the major is to increase your resource generation rate by 100%. So for specs like Shadow Priest, this looks really, really, really strong because Insanity is such an important resource for them. But for some specs, where you just already have, like, there are some rogue specs where your energies are just, like, your energy is not an important resource, or Shaman, Elemental Shaman, Enhancement Shaman, like Maelstrom regeneration, doesn't look like it'll necessarily be that good. So if you're playing one of these specs where like the resource it gives you back is not the crucial resource of your spec, Windwalker Energy as well, where you already kind of like don't necessarily like being energy capped isn't a huge problem, and Chi is sometimes more of a constricting resource. This essence will vary wildly depending on which spec you're playing.
And then my point is like that Memory of Lucid Dreams is like balanced around healers that have mana, right? So it's going to be balanced around not giving the healers too much like throughput or like mana return off of it, because otherwise it's just going to be overpowered into oblivion for everybody, right? It's so difficult to balance stuff like that just because of like the difference in resources, right? So they choose the people who it's the strongest on and balance it around that, so that it's complete trash for like specs, right?
With Memory of Lucid Dreams and Vision of Perfection, the ones that do spec specific stuff, they can nerf it for specific specs. Like here, it's like your spells and abilities have a chance to refund 50% of the spec resource spent on them. That chance can be different for different specs, right? Vision of Perfection, the value, like Vision of Perfection is the one that gives you your specs cooldown for a bit, and there's also numbers that they can change for specific specs here. So like reducing the cooldown of for Metamorphosis on Demon Hunter, they can change that by a different percentage than by Balance Druid's Celestial Alignment, for instance. So they can balance this without, like making it for specific, or without making it bad for everybody except the one spec is really good for. But you're right, it's definitely a challenge.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the same thing. It's like one of the similar issues that you have with like Azerite trades, where the generics are just generally overwhelmingly good just because of how they end up being balanced. Because they're trying to balance the generics with the spec specifics, but the generics actually are just like passive damage procs that don't require you to do anything. So it's like always going to be easier, right?
Yeah, and these are all kind of generics, like, for the most part.
Holy fuck, there's a snake outside.
Oh my god, Tettles. Are you gonna be okay?
Tettles, first your internet, now a snake. Are you okay?
You ever okay?
Okay. Yeah, so that's I don't know, that's the essence system. I'm optimistic about it. I think it looks like quite a bit of fun to play with these different essences. I'm sure that there will end up being like a lot of convergence towards a couple of specific good ones for each spec, but I think there'll still be room to make an interesting choice in a couple boss fights, and maybe do something cool with a specific essence at specific times, and especially in Mythic Plus, where the metagame is there, like there's more room to kind of do something innovative than in Raid. I think maybe we can come up with some pretty cool strategies around some of these essences. So,
I mean, they're just like not okay with some of the stuff being OP too, like Hot Trub. Like that shit got like gutted into the ground. Like I understand that it was good, but like it actually just got gutted, right?
Yeah, which is fine. I don't know. It's like
I'm a little butthurt about it. It could still be pretty good, and I might still take it anyway as my default. But yeah, I feel like when they said before they did any nerfs to essences, when they said we want essences to feel overpowered, like they should be, and we're gonna keep them that way. I thought they would at least let one nerf go and not two on the Hydro.
Yeah, so that's the Conflict and Strife trait that you got from the... So they're the essence that gave you a PvP talent, and the Brewmaster one was a huge damage increase, and then they nerfed it to be still a huge damage increase on single target, but split damage in AoE, and then they nerfed the damage on it again.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's rough. That's rough. I don't know. Like the other essences for Brewmaster look good too, though, right? Like, you'd be giving up on Sphere of Suppression, for instance, to play Conflict and Strife. So, like, you may still be able to do other OP stuff.
Mm-hmm. I mean, so like for me, the legendaries felt good because they interacted with your kit in like a certain way. So you'd always be looking to, because they were all OP in some degree. So you'd always be looking to see how you could like gimmickly use like a legendary in a certain way. Like you'd always see if you could like CC some shit target on like for Safus, or see how you could actually just get away with using like different legendaries in different situations all the time. Whereas now it's like you don't really have to think about it all that much. It's just,
I mean, there were a lot of specs that put on 2 legendaries and never changed them in Legion.
Were there really though?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, in Mythic Plus with gear swapping, you'd obviously have your like Pride Eyes, defensive sets or whatever, and swap around between Cephas and stuff. But
I mean, like Blood Death Knight used the least out of all the classes I know, and they still use like 4 of them, right?
Okay.
Yeah, even on DK, I had like 6 gear sets. It was nice. Like you could make a huge change from a full offensive build to a massively turtle defensive build in the middle of a dungeon because of the legendary power. And I agree with Tettles. I was kind of looking forward to that with essences as well. And if they keep on nerfing them, they'll be less so like that. It'll be like more of a, oh, whatever, I'll just take the normal essence because it won't make that big of a difference. Or it could be like really powerful, and you could really choose between something really useful or more damage or more defensive utility for a dungeon.
Yeah, I mean,
the choices are nice.
It's not like they're nerfing all of them, though. They nerfed a couple outliers that were high up, though. But that increases choice, right? If they're all closer to each other.
Yeah. And they still look good. I'm just hoping they don't keep nerfing them.
Yeah, I think that if whatever if the next thing we see is the 5 best ones or whatever getting nerfed down so that you don't feel them anymore, that'll definitely suck.
Yeah.
But I'm hopeful that they won't do that. I don't know. I think this is cool. One nice thing about essences as well is you're not going to have to pay to reforge them. Thank goodness, because you can just swap between them at will in a rested area. That is wonderful. Reforging is the single worst part about Azerite to me. So finally moving away from that a little bit is very much welcome.
I mean, so what are they gonna do with the Azerite system now? Are they just like kind of scrapping it, or like what's the deal with that?
No, Azerite's still there. There's new traits on the.
No. Like I get that, but like, are they just not going to be looking to balance Azerite very much, or like what's their deal with that now? Like moving forward, are they going to continue to like make new, innovative, cool stuff with the Azerite, or are they just kind of taking a mulligan on it and just going to only focus on essences, or like what do you actually think they're going to do moving forward?
I mean, they made new traits for the new raid.
I know, but none of them are actually like super cool, right?
Some, yeah. I mean, was Treacherous Covenant super cool?
No.
Was Archive of the Titans super cool?
No, none of them are actually cool, dude.
Yeah, they're not making new spec specific Azerite, which they did a little bit ago. They did kind of a rebalance that included creating some new spec specific Azerites, and it certainly, I'd be surprised if they did more of that. But I think they'll keep making, like, there's the Mechagon traits and the Eternal Palace traits, and some of the, I mean, they're all pretty boring, the generic ones, because they kind of have to be, because they have to work for everybody, like we were talking about. So yeah, I think that Azerite, I don't think they'll make new essences necessarily next patch, though. I don't know. I think they'll probably keep it the way it is.
I don't know. I feel like with the Azerite and the essences is all a bit much for me personally. I feel like it's getting needlessly complex.
Well, last expansion we had artifact traits with relics that you could do to get ranks in some traits, and we had legendaries.
Yeah, it added up to be quite a bit by the end. I would agree.
Yeah,
I
and then there was
the same direction.
There was Netherlight Crucible on your relics as well. So you then had your relics gave 2 points and also had like a Shadowbind or whatever thing on them too.
I mean, yeah, maybe the Netherlight Crucibles is more where Azerite is right now.
Yeah, I think we're moving towards kind of an end of expansion level of complexity. I think there's still a little bit of room for them to go maybe one step further. Which is good because there's probably another patch, or probably another major patch on the way in BFA, right? 8.3.
So maybe with all like the gear swapping in Mythic Plus, it was a little bit more complex. Now that I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, I think it's fair. I don't know. There's a lot of, essences that don't look like they're going to be that playable. There's a lot of kind of reasons to be down on the system, but I think this looks like an upgrade over the way the game was before. I think this is a step in a good direction. I think that Netherlight Crucible Legion was a pretty exciting time in terms of customization for classes and specs. So
I know. I think I'm definitely with you on. It definitely looks like an upgrade over like just Azurite, but I don't know. BFA to me feels like just the extended version of Legion. Like it's just like the extended edition where it's like we're actually not getting anything new. We're just getting stuff that's like repurposed and repackaged, which is like fine because Legion was like a good expansion, but it feels like we're suffering from like the issue of it's just getting old and it's no longer like exciting.
Yeah, I think one problem with BFA that would be fair to one fair criticism of BFA is that like BFA launch really felt like they took a step back from a lot of the systems they developed in Legion, and like a lot of the lessons that we'd hoped they would have learned from 2 years of Legion were just completely thrown out the window when they introduced a bunch of systems with the same problems that they had fixed back in Legion after 2 years of hard work. So hopefully going forward we'll start seeing. I don't know. I mean, I think they have different teams on different expansions, right? So like there might not be. It might be difficult for them to learn a lesson from BFA for the next expansion, but hopefully they realize from BFA, not doing that from Legion, that they can. That's an important thing to be looking at, and to have whatever systems you make not fall prey to the same mistakes, because like the player base is going to be a lot less happy the second time the same design mistake gets made, because then it feels like there's not forward progress. Okay.
I mean, do you want to see them like just completely axing the systems now, like after this expansion, and just like completely restarting with like new stuff that's like?
I feel like
just completely.
I feel like there's a lot of good stuff going on in the systems here. Like I think that this kind of gameplay is cool. Legendaries, Azurite, Essences, all those systems, artifact weapons had compelling and exciting gameplay stuff in them. They just many of them also had these flaws that were really really annoying too, like. RNG associated with acquiring them, the grind associated with them, AP and AK being kind of a prohibitive grind at some points in Legion.
Weapon relics, Titan forging, that was sick.
Yeah, those were the good old days for sure. So I hope that whatever system they come up with next expansion is kind of cohesive. It's not one thing that it kind of feels like with both BFA and Legion is the 7.0 systems and the 8.0 systems. Then they kind of like duct tape stuffed onto it in 8.1 and 8.2 and 7.1, 7.2, right? So a system that instead kind of naturally progresses and has when they create it in 9.0, they have a plan for what it's going to look like in 9.3 already. I think would lead to, because Essences really feels like a band-aid over the Heart of Azeroth.
Yeah, I think the Heart of I think the Azurite was supposed to be like for the whole entire expansion, and then they realized that
right, it was really poorly received.
Yeah,
which I think, yeah, I don't know. It's there are a lot of reasons that Azurite doesn't feel as fun to play with as stuff back in Legion. I think a huge one is the reforging. Reforging.
Yeah, I think people are like a little bit too hard on it all. I think it's all like okay, like all the dungeons are like okay, and everything is like playable, right? And nothing is like overpowered or broken. But I think it all feels just a bit bland for me personally. But I do think people are a little bit too harsh on it all. Like I do understand that.
Yeah, I think you're right that like at the end of the day, the important stuff about WoW is still like I don't know. For me, it's how fun the boss fights are and the dungeons and that kind of stuff. Class balance is a pretty important thing for me as well, which has been I've been a little down on this last patch cycle, but maybe that'll be fixed this patch.
Yeah, Rogue's really been struggling. It's true.
What do you mean, dude? I'm a shaman main now. I'm a shaman main. So
all right. Take raid out of this real quick. Hold up.
I am, dude. I'm a shaman main. My shaman is neck level 50. Actually, both my characters are neck level 51 right now. So I can't use that to make an argument for which one's my main. I don't know. Okay, one thing, speaking of neck level, let's talk a little bit about the artifact power grind, because that was something that was a hot topic going into this patch, but has since kind of been fixed. It seems like Blizzard shot this problem before it actually became a problem, which you love to see. That's just actually, yeah. Anytime they're this responsive, it's really cool. So the way it works is that obviously neck level 55 is a pretty big power spike because you get a second minor power, and so with what we knew about artifact knowledge coming into the patch, it looked like you were going to have to grind and just a total boatload of content of mostly islands to get to 55 by Mythic Week, which was something that people in like Limit and Method and whatever were interested in doing. But kind of everybody, if you wanted to be in your Mythic raid and having that second essence and top of the meters, which everybody does, it was something that was tempting. But then they just nerfed the AP grind. They gave us like 4 extra levels of artifact knowledge at the start of this patch. So now going from 50 to 55 does not look difficult at all. You have to play quite a bit, but you won't have to do like an absurd amount of islands if you just do all the content on your character and a few islands.
Yeah.
I think you're going to get there without too much difficulty at all.
I know. We were joking about it a little bit on the last show about not wanting to farm 70 islands a day for 2 weeks, and was like, all right, no chance. But now it's like it seems a little bit more reasonable.
Yeah.
I like the idea of having that 55 miner on all of your gear for like one class or maybe even 2 classes coming into the raid. It seems like that will just be a little bit better of a setup, and it will make the raid feel a little bit more fun, I think, overall. Actually, it might not impact it too much because you're just going to play Worldbane Resonance, but I would like to think that it's going to make you feel a little bit better.
Yeah, we'll unlock that neck level 55, which comes with Worldbane Resonance in the miner slot, which is perfect.
Pre-equipped, yeah.
Yeah. That certainly seems likely. Dude, one nice thing about the Worldbane Resonance is that because the Lifeblood Shard's power level doesn't increase with the rank of the thing, you can probably just leech off your guild, just get a rank 1 version, and you can still get full power level from it, because...
Wait, is that true?
Yeah, dude, the Lifeblood Shards give the same amount of primary stat regardless of ranks. You only increase the amount of Lifeblood Shards that you spawn by increasing the rank of the trait, but you benefit from your allies as well, so you can just get in there with your rank 1 and probably still have full uptime on 4 Lifeblood Shards and just leech off the rest of your raid.
Easy. There you go.
What is critical mass for? It's like 6 or 7, right?
I don't know. It has to be within 12 yards of the Lifeblood Shard, so like there might be a melee stack, and like if it's a fight where you're pretty spread out, you definitely are gonna like this might not be too good. But if there's a fight with a melee stack and a range stack, and everybody has Lifeblood Shards, yeah, you're gonna be good. You're full.
It's gonna be challenging for a Shard and Lady Ashvane, is what I have been seeing, but we'll see how that ends up shaking up.
Yeah, we still have to see what the specific fights and everything look like, but I think you're right that this one looks like a pretty general choice for many raid fights. It's kind of the like incandescent sliver type thing where you kind of want everybody to have it. Mm-hmm. Dude, there's an artifact power, or there's an artifact trait as well coming here that has a similar thing going on too. Yeah, here it's loyal to the end. Okay, loyal to the end. Your mastery is increased by 150 plus 37 for each ally also affected by loyal to the end, up to 300. And then when you die, your allies gain crit, haste, and verse equal to their mastery bonus from it as well. So if everybody's running this trait in your raid, you're gonna get it's a pretty big mastery increase on people. I don't know how many you actually need for this. It looks like you need like 5 other people to have it to be getting full value in your raid.
Is your elemental shaman ready, Dratnos? Because we're gonna have to start sacking you off. Okay.
Yeah, you just start sacrificing people to give everybody a huge amount of crit, haste, and verse.
Yep, you see.
Yeah, you said all 3 stats are given when they die.
And you'll still have mastery, so you'll have it'll be all four stats.
You always... that's degenerate gameplay.
Yeah.
Well, thank God they nerfed the what was it? Where did you reset your Ankh for Unat?
They nerfed the training grounds. Did they fix the end time?
Yeah, they fixed the end time. I think.
No. How are we gonna kill Unat? We have to kill that tonight. Oh, you guys. Oh, we're not gonna be able to re-clear.
Wait, I think they fixed it. Need to confirm that.
That was how you could reset your Ankh by just going to the end time and then engaging Morazun, the last boss. And then there was an hourglass you can click in that fight to reset all your ability cooldowns, and that included Ankh. So we would just, our shaman, when we were fighting Unat, we would just both get summoned after every pull to the end time where we would go hit that hourglass and then hearth back out. It was pretty stupid. So obviously if they fixed it, that's good. Definitely they should have.
And one more silly change that, one thing they fixed that I just remember before we move on is you can no longer get health stones from the Proving Grounds, but you can get health stones from your Warlock alt in the party before you go into the key. So you can still get health stones, and they only made it harder to get them.
Well, it's kind of, okay, for 4 people in the group, it's easier, right? For 4 people in the group, you just have to wait for the other person's Warlock to show up. So
Yeah.
you just need to not be the person who has to bring the Warlock alt, and then it's a big quality of life increase. But for that person, it's a huge quality of life decrease for sure.
Make sure you delete your Warlock alts.
Yeah, everybody just get your Warlocks out of here. Just faction transfer them, I think. Just play them on the other faction from what you normally do, and that way you won't be able to help, but you still have the character.
I mean, dude, Blizzard really understands this. They know that the person also is going to have their Warlock on a separate account, so they're going to be making money off 2 accounts for you. So I mean,
Yeah, it's definitely a lot easier if you multi-box, right? That's a much easier way to have the Warlock without having to log out and log back in every single time. Okay, Tettles, I know you have a take here about artifact power and artifact knowledge just in general. Would you like to deliver us a manifesto on that system?
dude, that shit should be removed from the game, and it's actually just so bad. So artifact knowledge is like, they pitch it as a way for like a catch-up mechanic, but it also just like super dilutes the artifact power and like the value of grinding artifact power on the front end. Like, of course, this was like a way bigger deal before they gave us 4 free artifact knowledge levels. But like, why did this have to be a thing where some people are going to grind 70 islands a day for 2 weeks to make sure that they have 1 minor power for progression, where it's like, all 3 of us here are just like sitting there, we're like, all right, well, I guess we'll get it when we get it kind of thing. It's like, there's no real point in us even grinding it. We're going to kill the boss post nerf anyways. So there's like just such a huge gap in terms of like player participation for stuff like that. And I don't really understand like why that has to be in the game. Like, why does it have to be through artifact knowledge and artifact power? Why can't it just be through like, why can't there be like a weekly cap or something like how they used to have for like valor points or honor points or whatever else, right?
Yeah, so the I think the reason they don't like weekly caps is because it makes you feel like you don't have to play anymore when you're done with making your weekly cap.
But dude, that's not even how it feels. It feels like I'm just like on an endless treadmill.
Yeah, so the problem with artifact knowledge is it makes it feel like anything I do this week, it would be better if I could do it next week instead, and it would be better if I could do it the week after that instead. So like, I kind of want to just like play in 4 weeks or whatever when AK is fully kicked in instead of now. And then just like, if I'm just thinking, hey, I'd love to grind some stuff, like, you know, do some islands right now, which is a thought I've never had, by the way. But if I were to think that, it would be better to do it later than now, which is
it creates like an apathy bonus. It's like so weird. It's like, well, I don't really want to play now. Like, I understand from like a catch-up perspective why it's there, but from like a I'm an active player who's going to play as long as the game is alive kind of perspective, then it's going to be really awkward for all of us to be looking to like even want to farm AP or even see a reason to farm AP, especially if it's like heavily gated by artifact knowledge, where we sit there and we look and it's like 160,000 AP until your next level up, and you're like, well, I could wait until next week whenever it's like 90.
Yeah, it's it is tough. I think that AP is like a fine system. Like, I don't hate it, but I agree it can sometimes feel bad this way, and it definitely is a grind, and you can feel how it's designed, like how it's less friendly to like playing casually and not spending all your time playing this game versus balancing it out between other games compared to systems like Valor with a weekly cap. I think some kind of like weekly cap system where if you're behind if you miss any of the weekly caps before, you get a bonus towards, like, you can get more until you catch up, would be a good way. So like, you can get 1,000 Valor per week or whatever, 1,000 AP per week, and then if you're behind the theoretical point where like the top level players are, then you can get extra until you get up there.
I mean, that's how Conquest is. Like, Conquest is like, you get 500 per week, and that's your cap. And then once you get past that 500, then you don't get any more.
I don't think I like how Conquest works. I don't like the system with Conquest, because, okay, if you come in with Conquest like 10 weeks into the system, there's just this 50,000 Conquest or 5,000 Conquest grind ahead of you to catch up on Conquest rewards.
You do get more Conquest, but per win or whatever, right? It is challenging to catch up like 15 weeks into the future, right? But it's similar to what you described.
Yeah, I don't know. I think there could be like some real, like, an actual like designed catch up mechanic that had, you know, they thought about what the experience would be like at each point if you return to the game, and they were like, okay, how long should it take for you to catch up from here, so that we don't invalidate the experience of the people who actually have grinded this the whole time, but we also don't make it feel like you have this huge road ahead of you when you come back.
I think separating out the catch-up from like the limiting factor seems like that would be the best move, but I don't really know how they would do that reliably. But like making sure that those are like two almost separate systems seems like that would actually just make it a little bit better for both parties, like the people who are actively playing the whole entire time and who are always going to be playing versus the people who are like gonna jump back into the game in a couple of weeks, right? Like there's nothing wrong with playing casually, like at all, but it is challenging if there are no catch-up mechanics involved. But I think if you actually were able to separate out the two systems somehow, I feel like that would be a little bit better.
I think that would be cool. I think that's definitely an interesting problem for them to solve. I don't know. It's unclear whether they think it's a problem. I think they probably just think AP is the best system they've ever designed for that, and it's okay. I don't mind it. I agree it would be cool if there was something a little bit more friendly.
Yeah, and you guys had opinions on both sides of the coin. And I personally I'm kind of neutral on it. I think last season was a good standing on AP where it capped out at a certain point. You never had to worry about it. In the beginning, it was a grind for the top 2% of guilds, that were going for cutting edge, world first kills on mythic bosses and all that, which is, I think no matter what you do, they're always going to play that much for those few weeks and do something to that regard.
Yeah, dude, I was watching a Limit Raider, like, unique fish for 25 rep each yesterday.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, if you give them, if there's anything to do in this game that will be a slight power level increase, they're doing it. So yeah, you're right. You can't try and stop them from grinding.
Do you think Blizzard is actually responsible for trying to stop that shit, or do you think
No.
they're just like, fuck it? Like,
No, man.
If you
even
animals
said-
want to grind 70 islands a day, go for it. Fuck
and
that.
if they didn't do that, they would just go to a different game and play that game that much instead, and that's totally fine.
Yeah. That's what I'm of the opinion of.
I mean, all of this stuff happened because of Warlords of Draenor having poor player retention because there was nothing to ever strive for outside of like a few weeks after the raid release, right?
Yeah, so Warlords had none of these mechanics that made you think I should play World of Warcraft this week to increase my character's power level, and I think they're very worried about having a patch without those sorts of mechanics. And I think part of the reason there's like 21 essences and you need to do different things to get all of them is you can always go into the game and be like, let me make progress towards getting this rank 3 today.
I mean, that's also part of the reason why they jam patches through so quickly, almost too quickly. It feels like sometimes.
Yeah, this patch has been a little late, right? Hasn't this patch been? It's been quite a while since the last patch. I guess Crucible Storms was kind of a mini experience, but that wasn't a full patch, right? You're right.
Exactly. I mean,
yeah.
This one has felt okay pacing wise, but there are some patches that just feel like so fucking fast. I think Uldir to Bod felt like it was like so fucking quick. I was like, holy shit, please give me a break, dude.
Yeah, I think they're worried about giving there have been times in WoW's history like Siege of Orgrimmar, Icecrown Citadel, where the game had just like a 12-month period of time where there was no new content.
Tomb of Sargeras into Antorus was like...
That was 6 months or something, yeah?
No. Because Mythic Kill Jaden was like so fucking hard, you actually had like no time between the two. Even though it was like Tomb was released in like July.
June, yeah, or July,
June,
yeah.
July, yeah, and then you would finish it. I finished it up in like fucking like September or something because that tier was just so fucking hard, and then they just like rammed through Antorus in like mid-November, so it was like I almost had like no time to just like not play WoW.
Yeah, that boss fight, you're right. That boss fight just took a long time for a lot of guilds.
That boss was stupidly overtuned.
I don't know. I don't think it's bad if there's always new stuff in WoW. I think that's fine.
Okay. I mean, like, I guess it's just a difference in perspective, right? I mean, if you always like new fresh content, it's fine. But I would like to second to like breathe and like actually play the content as opposed to like trying to achieve things. Sometimes.
I mean, we killed Unot like a month ago or something, right? We had a month of to do whatever, right? And now we've got this 2-week period.
I've actually gotten bored for the first time in a while, so I'm kind of feeling like it's slow now, personally.
Yeah, no, like right now it feels fine, but like at the same time, if we're like raiding 24/7, then we don't have like any opportunity to do Mythic Plus or anything. It kind of feels like shit to me, but.
I don't know. I think that the cadence of releases in WoW is pretty good right now. I think this is
okay. So honestly, it's probably has something to do with like progression rating versus like farm. Like honestly, like the level of dedication you have to have to the game during progression versus during farm is probably what actually makes me feel that way. Not necessarily like it's time. Right.
Right. Yeah. So when you're in progression, it's a much like you don't really want to miss that many raid nights at all.
Can't afford to miss raid nights actually, but yeah, exactly. I know what you. Yeah. I think that's part of it. Plus, it's like a fucking like a 4-day schedule for all of us, right? Or I guess not Trell anymore. Rest in peace. But it's like a 4-day schedule for Dratnos and myself. So it's like plus we're like always thinking about the raid fights and talking about ways that we can improve our strategies and stuff like that. So it's actually a lot more than just
and kind of like until Ajara dies, pretty much everything I do in game is going to be designed around killing Ajara as quickly as possible. So like it'll be farming towards that goal and stuff, and that I like that. I love the feeling of progression rating, and then when we do kill Ajara and it pays off all that hard work, it's awesome.
Yeah, no, but I think that's where my feeling comes from. Of like I need a fucking break afterwards because it's like that to me feels kind of grueling and
Crucible definitely like puts a weird tint on things as well, because that was like a full difficult progression experience, but it didn't come with all the normal stuff of a patch, so. It definitely.
I don't know. It didn't feel that bad for me, at least.
I think it makes the patch cycle feel a little weird though, because like when you put a mini tier in there like that, I'm not sure. I think if it were me, I would stop doing mini tiers if I was Blizzard. I think I would just do full raid tiers that have a full amount of time, and then not try and like put these mini tiers in, because it's unclear to me how many casual players actually got retained by creating Crucible Storms anyway. I know there are a lot of guilds that just never set foot in there, right? They were just like...
I mean, many tiers are guild killers, actually.
This one didn't even kill guilds. There were guilds that were just like, hey, we're not going to do this, right? Like, we're still working on Jaina. We're going to kill Jaina, and then we're just going to go to Ajara's Eternal Palace.
Dude, just in general, many tiers are guild killers, though.
Because, mini tiers. Okay, yeah.
Mini.
I heard many tiers. Yeah.
No. Like smaller tiers, like 2 boss tiers, are just like guild killers because you don't know if you really want to play that hard, but like the competitive part of you is like, I really want to play this hard. It's like, but it's a 2 boss tier. I really don't want to try that bad. And then your guild is like, no, we're not going. And then you're like, all right, I need to find a new guild.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tough because like, I don't know, it feels like, okay, Crucible Storms had these 2 awesome, really hard boss fights. 2 of the best boss fights I think they've ever made in terms of how fun they were to play. And just... like, they were really brutally hard, and every guild that went into Crucible immediately started hitting their head against Mythic Cabal, and if they killed that, they were then hitting their head against Mythic Unat, which is, Kill Jaden levels of difficulty. And there weren't, like, Champion of the Light, Opulence, Conclave, Rastakhan difficulty fights to keep the other guilds busy while we were working on Cabal and Unat, so they ended up having to get nerfed a couple times. And there were a lot of guilds that only make it to 6 and 9 Dazarlo or whatever, there's nothing for them in Crucible. That Crucible has no content for them.
I mean, the issue is that Crucible of Storms is like an addendum to what BOD was, so you do it after you did Mythic Jaina, but there's still only been like 12 Alliance guilds that have even killed Mythic Unat, and it's like, what the fuck?
Yeah, it's been such low participation in Crucible, and I think that it would be such a shame if they stopped designing these insane boss fights. I think that they just, when you have these awesome, really hard boss fights, those are the perfect fights to put after 7 easy boss fights. And I'd love to see them start doing that with those, because like I think Helya had similar problems too, and Helya was another amazing boss fight.
I mean, Helya also had the issue of like when that boss ended up coming out, because that boss ended up coming out like late November, early December, and it was like, what the fuck? Because Helya was like a 300 to 400 pull boss for a lot of like
any boss that lives over Christmas is
yeah. So you got fucked by Christmas like break, because like most guilds can't raid for 2 weeks during Christmas just because of like vacation timings and like spending time with their family and stuff like that, just by proxy of it.
Dude, the best is when the guild does try to raid and then like 3 people are missing, the other 17 people like show up, and like some of them show up despite not wanting to, and then you don't raid anyway, and just everybody hates everything. Yeah,
exactly. But it's like, so either you kill it before people break for Christmas on like the December whatever 10th that you normally end up breaking on, just because of how Christmas ends up lining up, and then you come back like early January, like the first week of January, and you're like, all right guys, let's get back into Trial of Valor.
Yeah. And then you're all rusty, and you regress the fight instead of progressing it. Yeah.
That boss also got like huge nerfs too, like right after Christmas, and it's like, what the fuck?
Yeah. So yeah, that's my little tangent about mini tiers. I'd love to see them keep making awesome boss fights like that and put them in in real raid tiers at the end of them.
There.
Okay, so I guess that's been our main topic this week. There's, I guess, a couple of other things about patch 8.2 that are quick takes. One thing is Water Striders are now dead. Crab emoji. Water Striders are gone. You don't need yours anymore. You can just get mount equipment, which is a pretty cool new feature. Dude, as soon as this patch came out, and I got this thing in the mail that's like, here's your Angler's Water Striders mount equipment, I put that on my mount equipment slot, and then I unfavorited my Water Strider, I unbound it, and you're never going to catch me on a Water Strider again. I've been on Water Striders for like 5 years, and it's gone. I hated having to use that Water Strider, and so I'm so happy with this mount equipment thing.
I'm currently using the white chicken.
Continually.
Ooh, the white chicken?
Yeah, the white chicken. It's very nice watching it run across the water really fast. It's very satisfying.
I'm using the Jaina mount, which the Jaina mount, now that it has water walking, it's so nice. It's such a nice oceanic experience.
Oh yeah, that would look good.
Is the white chicken the one that you always use during MDI?
Well, we use the void chicken during MDI because we were void elves, but I use the same model of that. It's just white. It's the blood elf one, I think, from Burning Crusade.
Yeah, that's a good choice. That's a good choice. I guess then the other thing to talk about a little bit is we have some news about dungeon scaling, which is that the dungeon scaling coefficient or whatever has been increased so that they're scaling more quickly, especially at higher dungeon levels. The gap between a 21 and a 22 is way bigger now than it was before. I don't know, Tettles, do you have any more information about the dungeon scaling and any thoughts on this?
It was Trell that had all the information on it. I literally had nothing on it.
So, we were running dungeons yesterday just to test them out. There's no real reason to run high keys, but we were doing it to test essences and just have some fun. So we noticed that when we put a 21 in the hole, it showed a 512% modifier on their damage and health. Whereas before the patch, and perspective here, a plus 24 key would have said 446% modifier on their damage and health. Whereas now, after the patch, it said 512% on a plus 21.
So 21 is dramatically harder than a 24 used to be. Yeah.
It would have been like, it should have felt like a 25 to a 26 from last week. It should have, at least. And then I went into there expecting that kind of damage on me as a tank, and it didn't feel like that. It felt like a 23. So something feels kind of off with scaling and how they did things. Or the other thing could be is that they nerfed the overall damage of mobs, as well as bumping up the scaling of key levels.
Yeah, they hit base damage or something, or there's a tooltip error. All right, so interesting.
So I'm friends with some of the Wowhead guys, and so I messaged Squishy. He's at Wowhead about this, and I think he's looking into it. But something's definitely off. He said maybe that the tyrannical and fortified affix may be broken, so maybe the other scaling elements are still there, just not the fortified element, which would make sense with how I felt as a tank, I think.
Interesting. Yeah, maybe there's some stealth nerfs to fortified and tyrannical being less impactful. Sign me up for that.
That would be awesome if that's on purpose. I would be so happy.
I'm okay with them actually like making health scale faster than damage. Like that's always been like a hot issue with Mythic Plus, is that if the damage is scaling faster than the health, then you have like these bullshit one-shot mechanics like we had in Legion that felt like not playable against. And BFA by and large has been like okay with this. They've been hitting like a lot of dungeons with a lot of balancing changes, which have been pretty good. Like for as much shit as we give them for their dungeon stuff, they've been aggressively trying to change it, so it's been pretty good. So if this is an intended change, I would be pretty happy with it. Sure.
Yeah, I think with the exception of a certain dungeon where you might find some royalty entombed, I think the dungeons have been pretty well balanced across.
That dungeon's bad.
But besides that one, I think they've all been pretty close, pretty good. So. Pretty doable on comparable keystone levels, and then that one dungeon, which shall remain unnamed, you have to do like 3 levels lower than the others still. Although they hit the spit gold in that dungeon. It could be any of them. That any of those dungeons with spit gold.
That's not the only change that they should be making in there, but
yeah.
I'll take what I can get, honestly.
But anyways, yeah, the fact that dungeons are now going to be scaling like more quickly at higher keystone levels in jumps of increasing size, I think that's fine. We'll have to see how it actually plays out, though, for sure. And if it's bugged in some way, we'll have to see how that resolves. There may be some stealth buff when they fix the bug, and those are always fun to discover.
Love that.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. So making them scale a little bit quicker makes it more interesting. It makes the difficulty jump between like some of the top end keystone level is going to be pretty like significantly more challenging. It'll be a lot easier to gauge like who's actually gaming super hard versus who had just like an okay run inside of like some of the 24s, because like all the 24s are pretty doable. I wouldn't say easily, but they were pretty doable.
Well, with the exception of that unnamed dungeon that no 24s have been done in time in.
Yeah,
Right.
unnamed dungeon is like not okay, but then like if you were to go ahead and make that leap and actually do a 25, everybody would be like, what the fuck? How did they do 25? So we're gonna have like way less like 25s done relative to 24s now, which will be interesting, I think.
Yeah, you're right. So there will be more of a kind of like wall at a certain level.
Yeah.
Like,
yes.
Yeah,
people will kind of
hopefully,
cluster around that one. Okay, so that might not be good then. That might be
there,
bad. Maybe it's good.
There were some dungeons that had walls on them. Like the notable ones are probably like Borealis and like I don't think Shrine of the Storm had a wall. Borealis did though. It felt like, and then there were some other dungeons that were just like so hard.
Temple, I think, had a. You could make an argument. There's like 25 was.
Temple had a pretty big wall, and then like Motherlode also had a pretty big wall. I think Toldegor actually kind of had one to some degree too. We had like a lot of people at 26 in that dungeon.
Toldegor, yeah. The only reason Toldegor was not done on 27 was that nobody got a 27 Toldegor key except for one team that had a DC during their run.
Yeah, I watched that run.
Dude, it was actually so heartbreaking. We did our 25 Toldegor so close to a 2-chest, and then we got a 26 Toldegor out of it, and if we 2-chested that 25, we would have had 27 Toldegor. And I think the chances are greater than 50% that we would have had the first and only 27 in time.
That would have actually been wild.
It would have been so cool.
I think there are going to be a lot more dungeons that are changed by like you have to like look at the time difference between the teams as opposed to looking at like who has this who has this one-off like 25 or whatever, right?
Yeah. So if everybody has the same keystone level done of a certain dungeon at the high end, then you're gonna have to look at the time instead of the seeing like, okay, this team did a 26, because the 26 just might not be doable at all.
Which is kind of weird. I don't know. It's kind of weird to think about like having to actually look at the time, because a lot of the time for pushing you actually only look at the level. You don't really look at the time because the time pad doesn't.
Yeah, and that's kind of a factor. Yeah. I think that's okay. I mean, I think if it starts feeling more speed runny, that'll be okay. Like if it's more about just optimizing your seconds and less about just beating the timer versus not beating the timer.
I'm okay with that. Yeah, it seems like it's a better change. I mean, like Legion was like that too, where it was if I lived the whole entire dungeon, then we automatically time it. So it was literally just like a survivability check.
All right, cool. I think that about does it here for our main topic and for all the stuff we had here. Although, of course, both of you are welcome to jump in and correct me if that's wrong. But one piece of useful, constructive feedback we got about the show was to not have me just ask you guys to step in. So I'm not going to do that. You're gonna have to cut me off if you want to say anything. But other than that, then we are out of stuff to talk about this week. Again, sorry about the pre-recorded nature of this week's show. We're going to try and minimize the amount of times we do this, but we want to release every week, even when we're going away. So. That's why we did pre-record this week. And we will be back next week. We should be all around, I think. We'll see how it works, though. You never really know. But we should be live again, at least, next Saturday on the Twitch channel. And then, of course, we come out Sundays on YouTube and Mondays on the audio feeds. Thanks, everybody, for watching. And goodbye.
Later, guys.